This is a very special bonus episode of Sounds Like Adventure, an actual play podcast all about fun roleplay, short runtimes, and great sound design. I'm your host and DM, Jack Traynor, and today, let's take a look behind the scenes. Hello, welcome. It is another bonus episode as we're sort of taking our little break in between seasons for Sounds Like Adventure. Hey, it's just going to be me for today. I know we promised that Chai and Jacob would be here to pick my brain and sort of ask all kinds of questions, but we're not immune to scheduling issues either. And yeah, unfortunately, I flew to Japan. Chai and Jacob, they've got this sort of their end of year stuff that's going on in their lives, and we just weren't able to make it work. So here I am. I'm going to answer a few questions, and I promise you, we're going to come back next week. We're going to do what we advertised, and I'm going to give the guys a chance to pick my brain, and they want to answer some of these questions you've asked as well. So, for this week, what we're going to do is I've got 3 of the most popular questions that we received, and I'm going to give you the answer for them today. We'll chat a little bit about what they mean, so it's not going to be as long as our usual episodes. Should fit nicely into your day while you're getting things done during the holiday period, and Chai and Jacob will get those chances next week to ask those questions. But hey, let's kick it off right now with the first question. All right, so first question. We received this from a bunch of different people in a bunch of different ways. And basically it boiled down to, how did you come up with the story for the game? How long did it take to make? How much prep is involved? All those types of things. And yeah, I have a really detailed and thorough answer on this one for you. So the initial start of this story basically came from, believe it or not, me wanting to run a D&D campaign that required less prep, because I'm a bit of a crazy person when it comes to prep. I prep way too much. And basically I went to Chai and Jacob. I said, can you guys come up with some characters, give me some ideas, and then I'll come up with a campaign idea, but I'm going to really under prep it. So they went away and they came up with Otis and Seok, totally by themselves. They came up with the Runai, and that was their whole creation. These 2 guys are brothers. They are private investigators, and the Runai has gone missing. And that's all we had. We didn't define it any further than that. So we played a session of this, and we had a ton of fun. Barely any prep at all. Really great time. And it was just all improv and funny RP interactions, as you could probably imagine from us. And then we recorded it as well, and I'm a podcast person, so I just decided, hey, I'm going to try and turn this into a podcast, see what comes of it. And what came of it was something that sounded a lot like what Sounds Like Adventure went on to sound like. So we got really excited based on how that sounded. Some weird things happened, and we lost some of that audio, unfortunately, something I never do. I was shocked that I've done that, first time in years. That was a bit of a bummer, but it was also an opportunity to just sort of start over from scratch. So what we did at that stage was, okay, this podcast idea is working. Let's do it. The no prep thing is cool, but come on, that's not what we're doing. We're here to make a podcast. We're making a great show. So the prep, that's coming back. So that part was thrown away. Prep is a huge, huge portion of these shows now. So then once we decided to do that, and once we decided we're going to sort of embark on the actual play podcast journey, we decided we wanted to really flesh out our background idea. So we played a game to do that. We played a game called The Ground Itself, an amazing indie TTRPG game that's all about building the backstory of a place. So we started out with a rough idea of what Ethel Grove was, a multiple-tiered city that extends from the ground into the trees above. That's all we had. We didn't have why it came about. We didn't have anything like that. Then we played that game together. And then by doing that, it enabled us to access all this stuff that we wouldn't have accessed through the various writing prompts and questions that game has. It was amazing. It really created Ethel Grove into what it is now. And where you are at in the Sounds Like Adventure story at the moment, you haven't gotten too much of the story when it comes to Ethel Grove, and so much more is about to come out. It is really quite a dense world that we've created, and The Ground itself allowed us to do that. Amazing game. Can't recommend it enough. And it's independent. And if you listen to the table business, that's something that we're all about here at Sounds Like Adventure. So we did that aspect together. Then from there, it was pretty much me sort of diving down into what I thought was sort of that central mystery, what happened to the Runai, and then creating the story from there. Then once that process was all done and it was all locked in, we play D&D, which the craziest part of this is that's the easiest part of this entire process is just playing the game. When we're playing, it's simple. But then the prep and then what comes next, the editing, the post-production side is just a monster on this show. If we're looking back from initial recording of our sessions to released episodes, we're nearly looking at a full 12-month turnaround. And there were other bits and pieces going on. There's a lot of downtime in a process when you don't have a launch date. It's pretty easy to deprioritize it. But that is a part of the creative process. There's downtime involved in it when you're trying to figure out things. You can't just be focused in 100% of the time just trying to create something, because that's very, very difficult and very draining to do. So yeah, I guess the short answer is when people ask how long did it take to make the first season of Sounds Like Adventure, I'd say a full 12 months. All right, so question 2. This is another really common one we get all the time. Shout out to Damien from Little Warrior Shields who asked about this. Chai and Jacob, they've had people ask them when they're sort of out and about in the world. And I get asked it quite a bit as well. People ask you about guest stars. Are we ever looking for new people to come on the show? Those types of things. So this is something that Chai, Jacob, and I are super excited about. We're trying to come up with a new way at the moment where we can have games with people who listen to the show, people like you. So that's something that's still on the horizon. It's still in the early stages. And look, it's very early days for the show. Season 2 is our big priority right now. So it's going to be on the back burner for a while, but it's something we're going to try and figure out pretty soon. Ways that we can all be playing together, I think, is just awesome. And then in terms of expanding the cast, things like that, having guest stars, these are really exciting things we're really intrigued about, though it's just still so very early for us. We're still trying to figure this all out in terms of how do we do this with our lives? How sustainable is this? And at the moment, 3 of us, we're mates, we know each other, we can work off each of other's schedule. We know we can sort of do late nights, weekends, those types of things. So it's really working in terms of building the show at this stage just to have the 3 of us. But yes, in the future, that's something we definitely want to look into. And I think a really big part of the tabletop world is just diversity. And I think if you listen to the table business, you'll hear that this is something we're really prioritizing, is speaking to people from different diverse backgrounds. So listen to the show, you'll hear us bringing that in. And that is obviously something that's very important to us. And it's something that we're going to look at trying to bring into the Sounds Like Adventure world as well. But once again, early stages, not really sure how that's going to look at this point in time, but I'm a huge believer of these things don't happen unless you actually prioritize it and talk about it. So we're thinking about it, we're talking about it, something's going to happen on that front. Okay, last question for today before we're back next week with Chai and Jacob to dig into some of the more fun ones. And it's a doozy. This is a huge one. This is one we got asked a bunch of times, most notably by Socio-Cerebral on Instagram. Are we planning on monetizing the show? So this is a huge, huge, huge question. And I think it permeates nearly all form of online content at the moment. I work in podcasting as my day job. And one of the most common questions that I receive from people who aren't making podcasts, who are interested in making podcasts, or who are currently making podcasts is, how much money can I make from this thing? When can I start making money from this thing? All those types of questions. And to me, those types of questions are just putting the cart before the horse. It's not really our priority at the moment to think, how can we start making a fortune off of this show? Because we set out to make this show because I make podcasts as my day job. I really love making podcasts. I've always wanted to sort of make my own show, and Chai, Jacob, and I love playing tabletop games, and we think we have a story and a show that people would be really interested to hear. At no point in those priorities is it we want to be millionaires. Sure, being totally honest, we'd love to quit our jobs and do nothing but Sounds Like Adventure full time. We'd love for that to be a possibility. But to set that out as our stated goal before having fun on the show, before making a show that's really good and deserves your hard-earned dollars, deserves advertisers' dollars, those types of things, it's backwards. It's not the right way to go about things. And it leads to some really gross decisions that people make where they are desperately looking for brand deals and they're making judgment calls that are not aligned with their own core values, things like that. So for that reason and many, many more, our main focus is creating a show that deserves your attention, that deserves the great honor that you guys have all provided to us by just listening to this show and telling us about how much you liked it. We want to earn that. We want to deserve that. So we want to keep making a great show. And at some stage, we may ask for some monetary support through a subscription on Patreon, something like that. All those things are definitely on the table for discussion at some point in the future. But primarily for us, we want to deserve that right. We want to have created such a great show that if we ever do ask you for a few dollars, you are totally comfortable providing that to us. Because to be honest, there's a bunch of costs involved in keeping this show live. There's a bunch of costs involved in producing it. That's obvious, that stuff. But what a lot of people don't realize is, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the apps that you play the podcast off, they don't actually host anything. It's not like YouTube. You don't upload your podcast to Spotify. You buy a hosting service to keep your show live, which is quite often a monthly fee or a yearly fee, which then creates a RSS feed, which those apps then just point to. And then it's just getting the podcast from that location. So just keeping the show live so you can listen to it for free costs us money. Then in addition to that, because this is an actual play podcast that has a whole bunch of extra bits and pieces going on it, we have production music libraries we need to be subscribed to. We have subscriptions to different apps to make graphics, to actually edit the podcast, to make the videos that we make. Then equipment costs, microphones, mic arms, audio interfaces, it all adds up over time. And then why not add in a few promotional expenses as well? Like we did a giveaway. So we paid full price for all of the stuff that was included in the giveaway. And then once you've been through all of that, you've been through all the monetary expenses, then you have to just look at the time expenses that are involved in there as well. Because my gosh, this is a hungry beast that just takes time wantonly. So I mentioned the full 12 months that it took for season 1 to be completed. That's a really long time, way longer than most other projects I would ever work on. So that's a huge expense, basically. Like I'm foregoing other things just so I can spend the time editing the show. And then once the show is out, there is so much other work to do. The promotion side of things, the social media side of things, it is just such a hungry beast and it just takes on so much of your time. And all of that stuff, that's just Chai, Jacob and I doing that. We don't have any team behind us. We don't have any backing. We don't have anyone. We're fully independent. So I don't say all this to like make you feel guilty or anything like that. I say all this just to put it in perspective. We really love making this show. And even with all of those expectations, all of those costs involved, we're not sitting there and racking our brains trying to figure out how we can start making tons of money on this show. Top priority for us is to make something that you really enjoy. So the best way you can help us is, if you haven't already, write a 5-star review on the show or tell a friend about it. Better yet, grab their phone, subscribe them to the show, download every episode on every app that they have, anything you can. Get creative. Go to JB Hi-Fi and press play on every episode there for all I care. It's just, we make this show for you, and anything you can do to get the word out to more people would just mean so much to us. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there for this week. This is part 1 of our Q&A series. We'll be back next week with another one, and Chai and Jacob will be here for that one. We'll share the stories of how we got into D&D. They'll pick my brain about any questions that they have remaining, and we'll go through the rest of the questions that we've received. And don't forget, season 2 of Sounds Like Adventure is coming very, very, very soon. It's almost terrifying how soon it's going to be. The 23rd of January, just a couple of weeks away. Well, hey, in the meantime, catch you next week for part 2 of the Q&A series.